The blood on her knees had dried to a dark crust by the time the temple floor was clean enough to see her own reflection in it. Ilara pressed the rag down one more time, wringing pink water into a wooden bucket that smelled of lye and copper. Her fingers were split at the knuckles, the skin so raw that the cold air stung worse than the scrubbing itself. Behind her, the moon goddess statue stared down, with marble eyes that caught the last sliver of light through the clear story window. And Ilara thought not for the first time that the goddess looked tired too. She was the temple keeper of the Ashenmoor pack. Not a priestess, not even an acolyte. The keeper, the one who mopped the blood after the moon ceremonies, who replaced the guttered candles at 3 a.m, who slept on a pallet behind the altar because no one in the pack house would share a room with a wolfless Omega. 23 years old, and she had never shifted. Not once. Her wolf was supposed to awaken at 16, then 17. Then the pack healer had pressed cold fingers to her temples and declared in front of 40 witnesses that Ilara's wolf was either dead or had never existed at all. Her mother had died giving birth to her. Her father had walked into the northern woods 6 months later and never come back. The pack kept her alive because someone had to scrub the temple and wolfless Omegas worked for free. She heard the footsteps before she heard the voice. Heavy boots on stone, not the shuffling drag of Elder Maren or the sharp click of Beta Ronan's dress shoes. These were deliberate, unhurried, the footfall of someone who had never once been made to rush. "Is this the one?" It was not a question. The voice came from the temple doorway, deep enough that Ilara felt it vibrate in her sternum before her ears fully processed the words. She kept her head down. She had learned years ago that eye contact with ranked wolves invited punishment. The wolfless one, yes, that was Beta Ronan, and something in his tone made the hair on Ilara's forearm stand. He sounded nervous. Beta Ronan was never nervous. He was a man who backhanded servants for pouring his coffee too slowly and once broke a teenager's wrist for stepping on his shadow. But right now, his voice had the thin, careful quality of someone standing next to a loaded weapon. "Alpha Kale." Ronan cleared his throat. "She's been the temple keeper since she was 14. Wolfless, as I mentioned, completely harmless. If you need someone to attend your quarters during the summit, she won't cause any trouble." Ilara's stomach cramped. The summit? She had forgotten. Every 3 years, the 5 great packs sent their leaders to negotiate territory trade routes, breeding alliances. The Ashenmoor pack was hosting this year, and Alpha Kale Voss of the Ironhold pack was the most powerful wolf on the continent. She had heard the stories. He had killed his own uncle to take the throne at 19. His wolf was said to be the size of a draft horse, black as wet obsidian. He had never taken a Luna because rumor said no woman could survive his wolf's intensity during a mating bond. She did not look up. But she smelled him. It hit her like walking into a wall. Pine resin and iron forge smoke, and something underneath that was purely animal. A warm musk that made her vision blur at the edges. Her hands stopped moving on the rag. The bucket water trembled. "Leave us." 2 words. Ronan's boots retreated so fast they squeaked on the wet stone. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Ilara had ever heard. She could hear her own pulse in her ears, could hear the candle wax popping on the altar, could hear a moth batting against the clear story window 3 stories above. And she could hear him breathing. Slow, controlled, the way a predator breathes when it has already decided. "Look at me." Her body moved before her mind agreed. She raised her head. He was enormous. That was the first thing. Not just tall, but built like the temple columns themselves, broad through the shoulders and chest, his black coat hanging open over a charcoal shirt that strained across muscle. His hair was dark and cut short military precision, and a scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, white against olive skin. His eyes were the color of raw amber, and they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like she was standing in direct sunlight. He was staring at her the way wolves stare at the moon, not with hunger, with recognition. "What is your name?" Again, not a question, a demand shaped like a sentence. "Ilara." Her voice came out hoarse. She had not spoken to anyone in 2 days. There had been no one to speak to. "Ilara, no surname. I'm the temple keeper." He took one step forward, then another, each footfall deliberate and measured, as though he was afraid that moving too fast would shatter something fragile. He stopped 3 feet away from her, close enough that the heat of his body cut through the temple's permanent chill. Close enough that she could see the amber in his eyes was not uniform, but fractured, shot through with veins of darker gold, like cracks in heated glass. "Say that again," he said. "My name." "Yes, Ilara." Something changed in his face. The hard line of his jaw softened by a degree. His nostrils flared, and Ilara saw his hands, massive hands, scarred across every knuckle curl into fists at his sides, not in anger, in restraint. "You smell like moonflower and snow," he said, and his voice had dropped so low it was almost subvocal, a frequency she felt in her teeth. "You smell like mine." The word detonated in her chest. Mine. She knew what it meant. Every wolf, even a wolfless one, knew what it meant when an alpha said that word with that particular gravity. Mate bond. Fated. The moon goddess's choosing. But that was impossible. She had no wolf. A mate bond required 2 wolves recognizing each other. She was half of nothing, a broken circuit. The bond could not complete. "You're wrong," she whispered. "I don't have a wolf. I can't be your mate." He tilted his head. The gesture was entirely lupine, a predator reassessing. "Your wolf is not dead." The healer said, "Your healer is either incompetent or lying." He said it with the absolute certainty of a man who had never been successfully contradicted. "I can feel her. She's deep, buried. But she's there." His amber eyes narrowed. "Someone bound her." The words landed like a physical blow. Ilara's hands went cold. Bound. She knew the word. Wolf binding was old magic, illegal in every pack for 300 years. It required a ritual performed on a child before their first shift, and it required someone with authority over that child. A parent, a pack leader. No. No one would. Who raised you after your parents died? Elder Maren. She's the pack's spiritual leader. She runs the temple. She took me in when I was 4. Something dark moved behind his eyes. Took you in. Or took you. Ilara opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She gave me a home. She gave me work. She gave you a bucket and a rag and told you to be grateful. His voice was still quiet, but there was an edge to it now, the sound of a blade being drawn slowly from a sheath. I have seen 100 wolfless omegas in my lifetime. None of them smelled like you. None of them triggered a bond. He crouched down so that his face was level with hers, and this close she could see the flecks of darker amber in his irises, could smell the forge smoke on his coat, could feel the warmth of his breath. Whatever was done to you, I will undo it. But I need you to come with me. I can't leave the temple. Elder Maren is not your owner. She'll punish me. She will try. He said it the way someone might comment on weather. A fact observed without concern. She will fail. Elara looked down at her split knuckles, at the bucket of pink water, at the rag that had been white 3 hours ago and was now the color of old rust. She looked at the marble goddess above them, at the tired stone eyes, and she thought about the 9 years she had spent on these floors, the cold pallets, the meals that were whatever the pack wolves left in the bottom of the pot, the silence that filled her days because no one in Ashenmoor spoke to the wolfless girl unless they needed something cleaned. "If I go with you," she said slowly, "and you're wrong about my wolf, if there's no bond, what happens to me?" He held her gaze. "Then you will be a guest in my territory, with a warm bed and 3 meals a day for as long as you wish to stay. I do not discard people." It was such a simple promise. Warm bed. 3 meals. Not discarded. The fact that it sounded like paradise told her everything she needed to know about the life she was leaving. "Okay," she said. She stood. Her knees ached. Her back ached. Everything ached, the dull, persistent ache of a body that had been working since before dawn and would not stop until well after midnight. He watched her rise with an expression she could not read, something between fury and tenderness, and she realized he was not looking at her face. He was looking at her hands, at the split knuckles and the raw red skin and the fingernails worn down to nothing. He took off his coat. It was heavy wool, lined with something soft and dark, and when he draped it over her shoulders, the weight of it nearly buckled her knees. It smelled like him. Pine and iron and that animal warmth underneath. She pulled it around herself, and for the first time in years, felt something other than cold. "My things," she started. "Do you have anything worth keeping?" She thought about it. A comb with 3 missing teeth. A blanket so thin she could read through it. A wooden pendant her mother had supposedly worn, though she had no way to verify this, because no one in the pack had known her mother well enough to confirm it. "No," she said. "I don't." They walked out of the temple together. The night air hit her face, cold and sharp, smelling of pine needles and distant wood smoke. The Ashenmoor compound spread out below the temple hill, a cluster of timber buildings around a central fire pit where the pack gathered for meals and meetings. She could see figures moving between the buildings, could hear the low hum of conversation and the clink of dishes being washed. No one looked up as they passed. That was the thing about being invisible. It meant you could disappear and no one would notice the absence. She had spent 9 years being unseen in this place. She would spend 0 seconds being missed. His convoy was parked at the eastern gate, 3 black vehicles, modern and armored, looking completely out of place against the rustic timber of Ashenmoor. A tall woman with short silver hair stood by the lead car, and she straightened when she saw them approaching. Her eyes flicked to Elara, then to the coat around Elara's shoulders, then back to Alpha Kyle. Something shifted in her expression. Not surprise exactly. More like confirmation. "Sarah," Kyle's voice. "Prepare the guest quarters in my wing." The silver-haired woman, Sarah, nodded once. "The delegation suite." "No, the room adjacent to mine." A beat of silence. Sarah's eyes moved to Elara again, and this time there was something calculating in her gaze. Not hostile, assessing. "Understood, Alpha." They drove through the night. Elara sat in the back of the lead vehicle, Kyle beside her, his presence filling the space like heat from a furnace. She pressed herself against the door and watched the forest scroll past in the headlights. Birch trees, pine, the occasional flash of animal eyes in the undergrowth. How long has it been since you ate? He said. She tried to remember. Breakfast had been a handful of oats she had taken from the kitchen stores before anyone was awake. That had been yesterday morning. A while. He reached into a compartment between the seats and produced a wrapped package. Bread, dark rye, dense, and studded with seeds, with a thick layer of salted butter already spread. The smell hit her empty stomach like a fist, and she had to swallow twice before she could speak. Thank you. She ate slowly because she knew from experience that eating too fast on an empty stomach led to cramps that doubled her over for hours. He watched her eat. He did not pretend not to watch. His amber eyes tracked each bite with an attention that should have been unsettling, but somehow was not. It felt less like surveillance and more like vigilance, like he was standing guard over something precious and could not quite believe he had found it. "The binding on your wolf," he said, after she had finished. "I have a healer in Ironhold. Old magic. She may be able to break it. And if she can't, then we find someone who can. Why does it matter to you? If I'm wolfless, the bond won't. The bond is already active." He said it flatly. "I felt it the moment I walked into that temple. My wolf has not settled since. He is agitated." She looked at him. In the dim light of the car, his face was all planes and shadows, the scar catching the occasional flash of oncoming headlights. Agitated how? He wants to shift. He wants to carry you in his jaws to the safest den he can find and guard the entrance until he's satisfied no threat exists within 500 miles. A pause. He is being unreasonable. Ilara stared at him, and then for the first time in longer than she could remember, she laughed. It was a small sound surprised out of her, and it hurt her cracked lips. But it was real. Something in his face shifted. The hard lines around his mouth eased. He did not smile. She did not think he knew how, but the amber of his eyes warmed by a degree like coals catching a breath of air. They arrived at Ironhold before dawn. If Ashenmoor was a village, Ironhold was a fortress. Stone walls 30 feet high, reinforced with iron beams that had oxidized to a deep burnt orange. Guard towers at every corner, each manned by wolves in dark tactical gear. The gates opened as their convoy approached, no signal, given that Ilara could see, and they drove through a courtyard paved in black stone that gleamed with moisture. The pack house was enormous, not a house at all, but a structure halfway between a castle and a modern compound stone, and glass, and heavy timber with fireplaces burning in every window she could see. The heat hit her the moment she stepped out of the car, radiating from the walls themselves, and she realized the building was heated by some kind of geothermal system that ran through the stone. She was warm. She was so warm that her eyes stung, and she had to blink rapidly, because she was not going to cry about temperature. She refused. Sarah led her to a room on the 3rd floor. It was larger than the entire temple sleeping quarters back at Ashenmoor. A bed with actual blankets, thick ones in layers of grey and white. A window overlooking a courtyard garden where even in the pre-dawn dark, she could see the shapes of dormant rose bushes. A bathroom with a tub deep enough to submerge in. Soap that smelled like lavender and chamomile. "Clothes will be brought in the morning," Sarah said from the doorway. "The Alpha asks that you rest. He will send for you at midday." "Sarah." The silver-haired woman paused. "What is he like?" "Normally. When he's not." Ilara searched for the word. "Collecting strays from other packs." Sarah's expression did not change, but something in her eyes shifted. A micro-adjustment. "He is fair." He is decisive. He does not tolerate cruelty toward those who cannot fight back. She paused. He has been waiting for his mate for 11 years. Every summit, every treaty gathering, every border negotiation. He walks into rooms and breathes deep and comes out with nothing. Until tonight. She left. The door closed with a soft click. Ilara stood in the middle of the room and stared at the bed. She pressed her hand into the mattress. It gave under her fingers like risen dough. She pulled back the covers and the sheets underneath were clean, genuinely clean, not stained and patched, and re-washed until the fabric thinned to gauze. She climbed in wearing his coat because she could not bring herself to take it off. The pine and iron scent wrapped around her. The pillow was soft. The blankets were heavy. She was asleep in 30 seconds. She dreamed of teeth. Not human teeth. Wolf teeth, long and white and curved, set in jaws so massive they could crush a femur like a breadstick. The wolf was black. Its eyes were amber. It stood over her in the dream, and she understood with the irrational clarity of dreams that it was not threatening her. It was waiting. Behind it, deeper in the dark, something else stirred. Smaller. White. Curled tight as a fist. Hers. She woke to sunlight and the smell of bacon. A tray had been left on the table by the window. Bacon thick cut and crispy at the edges. Scrambled eggs with chives. Toast with actual butter. A mug of coffee that was still hot, which meant someone had brought it recently, which meant someone had been in the room while she slept, which should have frightened her but did not. The food was too insistent. She ate everything. She ate it slowly, methodically, and when she was finished, she sat in the square of sunlight by the window and let the warmth soak into her skin, and felt like a plant that had been kept in a closet for 9 years, and was only now remembering what photosynthesis meant. Clothes had been left as promised, simple but well made. Dark pants, a soft grey sweater that was slightly too large, boots that were slightly too small, but infinitely better than the cracked leather sandals she had been wearing. She showered. The hot water was extraordinary. She stood under it until her skin turned pink, watching the grime of Ashenmoor sluice off her body and swirl down the drain in grey rivulets. In the mirror, she looked at herself for the first time in months. Thin. Too thin. Her collarbones jutted like shelf brackets. There were dark circles under her eyes, the colour of bruised plums. But her eyes themselves were unusual. She had always known this, a pale silver that looked almost white in certain lights. Wolf eyes, Elder Maren had once said dismissively, wasted on a wolfless body. A knock at the door. Sarah. The Alpha will see you now. She followed Sarah through corridors of stone and dark wood, past doors that opened onto libraries and armories and training rooms where wolves sparred in human form, the thud of bodies hitting mats echoing off the walls. The pack members they passed stared, not with hostility, with curiosity. A few nodded to her. One, a young woman with red hair and freckles across her nose, actually smiled. It was disorienting. In Ashenmoor, the best she could hope for was to be ignored. Kyle's study was on the top floor. High ceilings exposed timber beams, a wall of windows that overlooked the mountain range beyond the compound walls. Snow on the peaks, eagles circling. He stood behind a desk made from a single slab of dark wood, and when she entered the room, his head turned toward her with that lupine precision she was beginning to recognize. He was in a black shirt, with the sleeves pushed up to his elbows, exposing forearms corded with muscle and mapped with scars. A half-eaten apple sat on the desk next to a stack of documents. He looked like he had not slept. "You look better," he said. "I ate bacon." Something happened at the corner of his mouth. The barest twitch. She filed it away as the closest thing to a smile she would get. "My healer has agreed to examine you. Her name is Maeve. She is old and she is blunt, and she will not hurt you." He paused. "If she determines that your wolf has been bound, there is a process to unbind her. It is not painless." "What kind of not painless?" "The binding is rooted in the nervous system. Breaking it requires reactivating dormant pathways. It has been described to me as—" He searched for words, and she realized this was the first time she had seen him hesitate. "Being struck by lightning from the inside." "Okay," he studied her. "You don't want to think about it." "What's there to think about? I either spend the rest of my life as half a person, or I get struck by lightning and maybe become whole." She shrugged. "I've had worse mornings than lightning." The twitch at his mouth again, slightly more pronounced this time. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more afraid." "I'm terrified," she said honestly. "But I've been terrified for so long it's become a resting state. Terror just feels like Tuesday at this point." He came around the desk, closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him again, that radiating furnace heat that seemed to pour off him in waves. His amber eyes moved over her face, cataloguing, and she saw his nostrils flare as he breathed her in. "When this is over," he said quietly, "terror will not be your resting state. I will make sure of it." It was such a simple thing to say. No grand promise, no dramatic declaration, just a statement of intent from a man who clearly followed through on his intentions. And yet it cracked something in Ilara's chest that she had spent years mortaring shut, and she had to look away before her eyes betrayed her. "Take me to Maeve," she said. Maeve was 92 years old and built like a fire hydrant. She had white hair cropped close to her skull hands that were small but impossibly strong, and eyes the color of wet slate. Her healing room was in the compound's lower level, a warm space that smelled of dried herbs and beeswax, and the faint metallic tang of old magic. "Sit," Maeve said, pointing to a wooden chair. "Don't talk, don't move, and for the goddess's sake, don't flinch when I touch your head. I have arthritis. If I have to readjust, it hurts me more than it hurts you." Ilara sat. Maeve's hand settled on her temples, dry and papery, and surprisingly warm. The old woman closed her eyes. Silence. The candles on the workbench flickered. In the corner of the room, dried bundles of rosemary and thyme swayed without any visible draught. Kyle stood by the door. He had not been invited. He had not asked permission. He simply stood there with his arms crossed and his amber eyes fixed on Ilara with an intensity that made the air in the room feel like it was developing a charge. "Well," Maeve said after a full minute, "that's the ugliest binding I've ever seen." "Can you break it?" Kyle said. "I can break it. The question is what comes out when I do." Maeve opened her eyes and looked at Ilara with an expression that was part clinical, part something else. Something almost like pity. "Child, whoever did this to you was not merely suppressing your wolf. They were containing her. There is a significant difference." "Containing," Ilara repeated. "Your wolf is not a normal wolf. She is large, energetically speaking. Whoever bound her knew what they were dealing with, and they were frightened of it. The binding is layered, multiple sessions over years. The first was done when you were very young, possibly an infant." The room went still. Kyle uncrossed his arms. "What kind of wolf requires that level of containment?" he said. Maeve looked at him, then back at Ilara. "The white kind." A sound came from Kale that was not quite a word. a low rumble that Ilara felt in the floor through the soles of her 2 small boots. She did not understand the reference, but his reaction told her it meant something significant. "What is a white wolf?" she asked. "Rare," Maeve said. "Approximately 1 per generation. Royal bloodline. The last white wolf was your mother-child." The room tilted. Ilara gripped the edges of the chair. "My mother was a servant. She was nobody. That's what I was told." "You were told wrong." Maeve's voice was not gentle. It was factual. An old woman who had run out of patience for lies decades ago. "Your mother was Lyanna of the Silver Pine Pack, alpha-blooded, a white wolf. She came to Ashenmoor fleeing a war and died giving birth to you. And someone in Ashenmoor recognized what you were and bound your wolf before you were old enough to speak." "Elder Maren." Cale's voice was very quiet, very controlled, the voice of a man holding back something with teeth. Maeve nodded. "Almost certainly." Ilara's vision blurred. She blinked and felt wetness on her cheeks. She wiped it away with the sleeve of the too large grey sweater. Why? Why would she do that? Because a white wolf in Ashenmoor would have outranked every wolf in the pack, including the alpha. Because you would have been the most powerful wolf in the territory by the age of 16. Because Elder Maren controls Ashenmoor's spiritual authority, and a white wolf would have made her obsolete. Maeve tilted her head. "Power, child. It's always power." Kyle moved, not toward Ilara, toward the door. Sarah was outside. He spoke to her in a low voice, too quiet for Ilara to hear, but she caught the words, "Ashenmoor and Maren," and immediately. Sarah's footsteps retreated at a pace that was nearly a run. He came back into the room. His eyes had changed. The amber was brighter now, almost luminous, and Ilara realized she was seeing his wolf press forward behind his human face. He was holding himself in human form, through sheer will. "Break the binding," he said to Maeve. "Now." "The girl needs to consent." They both looked at Ilara. She thought about the dream, the black wolf standing over her, the white shape curled in the dark behind it. Waiting. "Do it." Maeve worked quickly. She produced a stone bowl filled with dark liquid that smelled of iron and crushed wintergreen. She painted symbols on Ilara's wrists, her temples the nape of her neck. The liquid was cold, and it tingled where it touched bare skin. "This will hurt," Maeve said. "I will not sugarcoat it. It will be the worst pain you have ever felt. It will last approximately 90 seconds. After that, either the binding breaks or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, we try a different approach. Do not fight the pain. Let it move through you." "I understand." "Good. Alpha, hold her chair. If she thrashes, she'll crack her skull on the floor." Kyle's hands settled on the back of the chair. His fingers were so close to her shoulders, she could feel the heat of them through the sweater. Maeve placed both hands on Ilara's head and spoke a word. The world ended. There was no other way to describe it. The pain was not like lightning. Lightning was external, brief electric. This was internal, a detonation at the base of her skull that radiated outward through every nerve ending simultaneously. She could feel things tearing inside her, not physically, but energetically, layers of old magic ripping apart like wet paper. She screamed. She must have screamed, because her throat was raw afterward, but she could not hear it over the roaring in her ears, a sound like a river breaking through a dam. And then, in the center of all that destruction, something moved. Not something. Someone. She felt her wolf rise like a creature surfacing from deep water. 9 years of suppression. 9 years of silence. 9 years of being told she did not exist. And she rose with all of that fury and all of that hunger and all of that need compressed into a single moment of awakening that blew the remaining binding apart like cobwebs in a hurricane. Ilara's vision went white. Not dark. White. Blinding absolute white. When it cleared, she was on the floor. The chair was in pieces. Maeve was pressed against the far wall, breathing hard. And Cale. Cale was on his knees, in front of her, both hands, cupping her face, his amber eyes wild and searching. "There you are," he breathed, not to Ilara, to her wolf. He could see her now. Whatever had been hidden was hidden no longer. Ilara felt her wolf settle into her body like a key turning in a lock. Click, every cell realigned, every nerve ending rewired. She could suddenly hear the mice in the walls, could smell the snow on the mountain peaks 3 miles away, could feel the electromagnetic pulse of every heartbeat in the building. Kyle's heartbeat was the loudest, strong and slow and perfectly steady, a metronome in the chaos. And underneath all of it, threading through her like gold wire through dark fabric, the bond, the mate bond, complete, undeniable. A tether between her wolf and his that hummed at a frequency she could feel in her teeth. "Oh," she said. He almost smiled. Almost. "Yes, that's a lot. Yes." She looked down at her hands. Her nails had lengthened slightly sharper now, and the split knuckles were healing in real time, the raw skin knitting together with a faint itch. She looked up at Cale and saw him differently, not just as a man, as a mate. Her wolf recognized him with a certainty that was animal and absolute, and allowed no argument. "Your wolf," she said, "the one that wanted to carry me in his jaws. He is considerably more agitated now. Tell him I'm fine." He doesn't care about fine. He wants irrefutable proof of safety, which apparently requires a territorial perimeter of no less than a mile in every direction. She laughed again, that surprised, cracked lip sound, and this time the corner of his mouth moved far enough that it could no longer be called a twitch. It was a smile, small and unpracticed and fleeting but real. Maeve cleared her throat from across the room. "If the two of you are done making eyes at each other on my floor, I have arthritis medication to take, and a nap to catch up on." They stood. Ilara's legs were shaky but functional. Kyle kept one hand on the small of her back as they left the healing room, and the warmth of his palm through the sweater was grounding an anchor point in a world that had fundamentally shifted in the last 90 seconds. In the corridor, Sarah was waiting. Her expression was controlled, but her eyes were sharp. "Alpha, we have a response from Ashenmore. And Eldamaran has sealed the pack borders. She is claiming Ilara is a stolen ward. She is threatening to bring the matter before the Council of Packs." Kyle's hand on Ilara's back did not move. His expression did not change. "Let her. She has also sent a message directly to you." Sarah produced a folded paper. "It's personal." He took it. "Read it." His face remained utterly neutral, which Ilara was beginning to understand was his most dangerous expression. No emotion meant he had moved past emotion into something colder and more deliberate. "What does it say?" Ilara asked. He folded the paper and put it in his pocket. "She says you are defective, that you have no wolf, that any bond I believe I feel is a delusion, and she is doing me a favor by taking you back before I embarrass myself." Something ancient and tired moved through Ilara, the old resignation, the familiar weight of being told she was nothing less than nothing, a defect in the shape of a girl. It settled over her shoulders like a shawl she had worn so long she had forgotten it wasn't part of her body. But underneath it, for the first time, something else stirred. Her wolf, offended, not sad, not resigned, angry. "She bound me," Ilara said slowly. "She bound me when I was a baby, and she kept me in a temple scrubbing floors for 9 years, and she told everyone I was wolfless, so no one would ever ask questions. Yes. And now she wants me back. She wants what you represent. A white wolf under her control is a weapon. A white wolf bonded to the Alpha King of Ironhold is a threat." He paused. "She is right to be afraid." The next 3 days passed in a blur of discovery. Ilara's wolf was, as Maeve had understated, large. In her first shift, which happened on the training grounds at dawn, while Kyle watched from the sideline with his arms crossed, and his beta Sarah standing by with a medical kit, just in case Ilara's wolf emerged, and she was white. Pure, luminous white, with silver eyes that caught the early light and threw it back like mirrors. She was smaller than Kale's wolf, which she saw for the first time when he shifted to stand beside her, an enormous black shape that dwarfed the other wolves in the compound. But she was not small. She was lean and fast, and when she ran instinctively without thinking, she covered the training ground in 3 strides and leaped the fence at the far end with 6 inches to spare. Kyle's wolf didn't chase her. He sat. He watched her run with those amber eyes burning in his black face, and he waited until she came back to him on her own, which she did because the bond pulled, and the pull was warm and right, and she was tired of fighting things that felt right. They shifted back. He handed her a blanket without looking at her body, which she appreciated. "Your wolf is fast," he said. "Your wolf is patient. He has been waiting 11 years. He can wait 11 more seconds." She studied his face, the scar, the hard jaw, the amber eyes that softened when they looked at her, and only when they looked at her. "You said your wolf is difficult, that he's hard to control." "He is. He seems calm right now. Because you are right here." He said it simply. "When you are not within his sight line, he becomes problematic. My beta was concerned about this. She suggested it might indicate instability." "And what do you think?" "I think my wolf was designed to protect something specific, and now he has found it, and the calm he feels is not weakness. It is purpose." Ilara looked away. The morning sun was turning the mountain snow to gold. Her wolf hummed inside her content, and fierce and growing stronger by the hour. Muscle memory she had never been allowed to develop was developing rapidly, her senses sharpening her reflexes, quickening. Maeve checked her daily and reported with grudging amazement that Ilara's wolf was compensating for 9 years of dormancy at a rate that should have been physiologically impossible. "White wolves," Maeve said, peeling an orange over her workbench. "They're not just strong, they're adaptive. Your body is rebuilding itself around her. Give it a month, and you'll be at full capacity. Give it 6 months, and you'll outstrip most alphas." "Most. Not yours." The old woman jerked her chin toward the door beyond which Kyle was almost certainly standing, because he had not been more than a hallway away from Ilara since the unbinding. "He's in a class by himself, but you'll be the closest anyone's ever come to matching him, and that—" She dropped orange peel into a bowl. "That is exactly why Elder Maren bound you. Imagine that kind of power emerging in her pack, uncontrolled, unowned, a teenage girl with an alpha-class wolf and no loyalty to anyone. Maren saw the threat the moment you were born. She could have just let me grow up normally, trained me, made me pack. Could have, didn't. Because training requires sharing power, and people like Maren don't share. Maeve looked at her with those wet slate eyes. Don't mistake what she did for cruelty alone, child. There was fear in it, too. She feared what you are. That's not nothing. It was the first time anyone had suggested that Maren's actions had any dimension beyond malice. Ilara turned it over in her mind. She thought about Maren's face, the way the old woman had looked at her sometimes when she thought Ilara was not watching. Not with hatred, with something more complicated. A tightness around the eyes, a set to the jaw. The expression of someone looking at a loaded weapon and knowing they had been the one to load it. It did not make Ilara forgive her, but it made her understand the shape of it, and understanding was different from forgiveness, and both were different from the rage that was slowly, quietly building in her chest. On the fourth day, the Council of Pax sent a summons. Elder Maren had filed a formal complaint, theft of a ward, violation of Pax sovereignty. The council demanded that Alpha Kyle Voss present himself and the contested Omega at the neutral summit grounds in the Greywood within 5 days. Kyle read the summons at his desk. Ilara sat across from him in a chair that was too large for her, her knees pulled up, wearing one of his sweaters because her own clothes had not arrived yet, and his were warm and smelled right, and she was done, pretending she did not find comfort in his scent. "She's forcing your hand," Sarah said from the doorway. "If you refuse the council summons, she paints you as a rogue alpha. If you comply, she gets Ilara in front of 5 pack leaders who have no reason to favor you." "I'm not refusing the summons," Kyle said. He looked at Ilara. "Will you stand before the council?" "Do I have a choice?" "You always have a choice. If you say no, I will find another way." "What other way?" "War, most likely." He said it the same way he had described Maren's likely failure. A fact, not a threat, not a bluff. If Ilara said no, he would go to war with Ashenmore to keep her safe. He would do it without hesitation and without apology, because his wolf had decided she was his, and Kyle was the kind of man whose wolf's decisions and his own were the same thing. "I'll go to the council," she said. "I'm not going to let you start a war, because I'm scared of an old woman with a grudge. You have every right to be scared of her. I have every right to face her, too." His amber eyes held hers. "Yes, you do." She prepared for the council, hearing the way she prepared for everything quietly and thoroughly. Maeve taught her the protocol, the formal language, the rituals of address. Sarah drilled her on the political landscape, which pack leaders were allied with Ashenmore, which were neutral, which owed debts to Ironhold. Kyle taught her how to fight, not with fists, with presence. "You have spent your life making yourself small," he said. They were in the training room, empty now late evening. The mats were cool under her bare feet. He stood in front of her, close, so close she could count the flecks in his amber eyes. "Hunching your shoulders, dropping your gaze, taking up less space than you deserve. This is what Maren taught you. This is what she needed you to be." "I know." "Then stop. It's not that simple. Look at me." His hands settled on her shoulders. The weight of them, the warmth. She felt her wolf stir, attentive. "When you stand before the council, Maren will expect to see the girl she created. The small one, the silent one, the one who scrubs and does not spick. If you show her that girl, she wins. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Then show me who you actually are." She looked up at him, all the way up because he was nearly a foot taller than her, and his presence filled rooms like heat. She straightened her spine. She squared her shoulders, and she let her wolf come forward, not to shift, but to be present behind her eyes, to fill the space she had always left empty. Something moved in his expression. Not quite that unpracticed smile. Something deeper, Something that looked, if she was being honest, like awe. "There she is," he murmured. They stood like that for a long moment, his hands on her shoulders, her eyes on his. The training room hummed with the frequency of the bond between them, and Elara realized that somewhere in the last 4 days she had stopped being afraid. Not of Maren, not of the council, not of the possibility that all of this would be taken from her. She was afraid of something else now. She was afraid of how much she wanted to stay. "Kyle." "Yes. When this is over, after the council, what happens to us?" His thumbs moved on her shoulders, small circles. "Whatever you want to happen." "That's not an answer." "Then here is one." He leaned down, not to kiss her, to press his forehead against hers, a gesture she recognized from the old rituals Maeve had taught her. A wolf's promise, skin to skin, breath shared. "I will claim you before the moon and every wolf who cares to watch. I will mark you as mine, and I will be marked as yours, and I will spend whatever time the goddess gives us, making sure you never sleep cold or eat last or scrub another floor on your knees again. Not because you are a white wolf, not because the bond compels me, because in 4 days you have made me laugh twice, and I had not laughed in 3 years, and I would go to war for considerably less." Her breath caught, her wolf keened inside her, a sound of longing, so pure it almost broke through her human throat. "2 laughs," she said, her voice unsteady. "That's your threshold for war." One would have sufficed. She closed her eyes. His forehead was warm against hers. His breath smelled like the coffee he had been drinking all day, and underneath it, pine and iron and that animal warmth that her wolf recognized as home. "Okay," she whispered. "After the council. After the council." The Greywood Summit grounds were ancient, a natural amphitheater carved into the side of a mountain, ringed by trees so old their trunks were wider than cars. Stone seats arranged in concentric circles around a central platform torch, lit even in daylight, because the canopy was so thick that sunlight reached the floor in thin, angled columns that looked like golden pillars. 5 pack leaders, 50 witnesses, Elder Maren standing at the edge of the platform in her ceremonial robes, white linen trimmed with silver thread, her hands folded in front of her, with the patient composure of a woman who had been manipulating pack politics since before Elara was born. She was smaller than Elara remembered. That was the first thing she noticed. In her memories built over 9 years of obedience, Maren was towering, monolithic, a pillar of authority that could not be moved. But standing here in the open air, surrounded by actual alphas, Maren was just a woman, 70 years old, sharp-faced, eyes like polished obsidian, hard and reflective. She looked at Elara, and something flickered in those eyes. Recognition, yes, but also something else. That tightness Elara had seen before, that loaded weapon look. "The matter before the council is simple," Maren said. Her voice carried well. She had been giving sermons in the Ashenmore Temple for 50 years, and she knew how to project. "My ward was taken from her home by Alpha Voss, without my knowledge or consent. The girl is wolfless and vulnerable. She cannot make informed decisions about her own welfare. I am requesting her return." Kyle stood beside Elara on the platform. He had not spoken. He did not seem inclined to speak. He stood with his hands at his sides, and his amber eyes on Maren, and Elara could feel his wolf just beneath the surface, pressing forward a massive dark presence that made the air around him feel heavy. The council leader, A grey-haired alpha from the Thornridge pack named Aldrich leaned forward in his stone seat. "Alpha Voss, your response." "Elara will speak for herself," Kyle said. That was all. He stepped back, Maren's composure cracked by a fraction. She had not expected this. She had expected Kyle to posture, to argue, to make this a dominance display between alphas. She had not expected him to defer to the girl she had spent 9 years teaching to be silent. Elara stepped forward. She felt the weight of 50 pairs of eyes. She felt the mountain wind on her face, cold and clean, carrying the scent of pine resin and old stone. She felt her wolf fully awake, now, pressing against the inside of her skin, ready. "My name is Elara." Her voice was steady. She was surprised by how steady it was. "I am not wolfless. I have never been wolfless. My wolf was bound by Elder Maren when I was an infant, because my wolf is a white wolf, and Maren feared what that meant for her authority." A murmur through the assembled witnesses. Aldrich's eyebrows rose. Maren's face did not change, but her hand, still folded in front of her, tightened until the knuckles went pale. "I am the daughter of Lyanna of the Silverpine Pack, alpha-blooded. I was told my mother was a servant. I was told I had no wolf. I was told I was defective. I was told these things by the woman standing across from me, and she told them to me every day for 9 years, while I scrubbed her temple floors until my hands bled." She held up her hands. The knuckles were healed now, smooth and whole, but the memory of what they had looked like was still fresh. Alpha Voss didn't steal me. He recognized the mate bond, and he gave me a choice. Stay or go. I chose to go. Not because of the bond, because it was the first time in my life anyone had given me a choice at all. Silence. The wind moved through the old trees and the torches flickered, and somewhere in the forest a bird called a high, thin sound that hung in the air like a note held too long. Aldrich looked at Maren. "Elder, the accusation of wolf binding is severe. If proven, it carries a sentence of permanent exile and stripped rank. Do you deny it?" Maren did not speak immediately. Elara watched her face and saw the calculation happening in real time, the weighing of options, the assessment of odds. And then Maren did something Elara didn't expect. She looked at Elara. Not at the council, not at Kale, at Elara. And for a single, unguarded moment, the mask dropped. The hard obsidian eyes softened. The tightness in her face eased. And Elara saw what was underneath. Not evil, not cruelty. Exhaustion. The bone-deep exhaustion of a woman who had been carrying a secret for 23 years and was finally too tired to hold it. "I bound her," Maren said. Quiet, almost gentle. "I bound her the night she was born. Her mother's wolf was so powerful it killed Lyanna during labor. The shift came involuntary, and it tore her apart. I pulled Elara from the wreckage of her mother's body, and I felt the wolf inside her, already awake, already enormous, and I knew." She paused. "I knew she would destroy Ashenmoor, not intentionally, not maliciously, simply by existing. A white wolf cannot be subordinate. She reshapes every hierarchy she enters. Ashenmoor is a small pack. We could not survive the upheaval." "So you crippled a child," Aldrich said. "I saved a pack." Maren's voice was thin but firm. "I gave her a life, a role, a place. It was not a kind life. I know that. But it was a life. Her mother had died simply by carrying her. I was not willing to let a second person be consumed." Elara stared at her. The anger was still there, a deep red coal in her chest, but layered over it, complicated and unwelcome, was understanding. Maren had watched Lyanna die, had pulled a blood-soaked infant from the body of a woman destroyed by her own wolf's power, had felt the newborn's wolf, and known with the certainty of 50 years of spiritual practice that this child would crack the foundations of everything Maren had built. It did not make it right. Nothing could make it right, but it made it human, and Ilara had not been prepared for Maren to be human. "You could have sent me to another pack," Ilara said. "You could have told me the truth. You could have let me choose. You were a baby." "I was a baby for a year. I was a child for 17 more. At what point in those 17 years did the choice become mine?" Maren did not answer. She looked down at her folded hands, and she was just an old woman standing in a forest clearing in white robes that had gone slightly yellow at the hems. "The council will deliberate," Aldrich said. "Alpha Voss, do you wish to speak?" Kyle stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, precise, each word chosen. "Ilara is my fated mate. The bond is complete and mutual. She has a wolf, she has a name, and she has a choice, which she has made. Whether the council validates Elder Maren's exile is the council's business. Ilara's status is mine." He turned to Maren. The amber of his eyes was bright, wolf-bright, and his voice dropped to a register that Ilara felt in her bones. "You will not pursue her. You will not contact her. You will not send wolves to my border. If you do any of these things, I will not bring the matter before the council. I will bring it before my wolf." And he is considerably less interested in deliberation. The silence that followed was absolute. Aldrich cleared his throat. "The council will retire. A decision on Elder Maren's status will be issued within the week. Regarding the matter of the contested ward, the council recognizes Ilara as a free wolf of Alpha bloodline, bound to Alpha Voss by the moon goddess's choosing. The claim is valid. The complaint is dismissed." Maren closed her eyes. Her shoulders dropped by an inch. She turned and walked away from the platform, and her step was the step of someone carrying something very heavy for a very long time, who had finally set it down. Not relief, not defeat, just the absence of weight. Ilara watched her go. She expected to feel triumph, vindication, the hot rush of justice served. But what she felt was more complicated and less satisfying, a kind of grief for the life she should have had, the mother she never knew, the wolf she was never allowed to become. You could not get those years back. No council ruling could return them. Kyle's hand found the small of her back, warm, steady. "Are you all right?" he said. "I don't know. That's an honest answer. It's the only kind I've got." They drove back to Ironhold in silence. Not uncomfortable silence, the kind that exists between two people who have said enough for one day and are content to simply occupy the same space. It was evening when they arrived. The compound was lit from within every window, glowing amber and gold, and the geothermal warmth hit Ilara like an embrace when she stepped out of the car. Home. Her wolf supplied the word before her brain could. Home. She stopped in the courtyard. Stars were emerging above the mountain peaks, scattered across the darkening sky, like salt on black marble. The air smelled of wood smoke and dinner, and the clean cold of altitude. "Kyle." He stopped beside her, waited. "The marking ceremony. You said after the council." "Yes." "The council is over." He turned to face her. In the fading light, his amber eyes were dark gold, and the scar on his jaw was a silver line that she wanted to trace with her fingertip. "Are you sure?" he said. "You said you would claim me before the moon, and every wolf who cared to watch." "I did. The moon is right there." She pointed. It was rising over the eastern peak, full and white and enormous, so close it looked like she could walk to it. And I don't care about the wolves. I just want you. Something broke open in his expression. The control he maintained like armor, the measured words, the contained force. It cracked. And what came through was not the Alpha King. It was just Kyle, a man who had waited 11 years for someone and found her scrubbing a temple floor with bleeding hands, and was still even now afraid to want her too much in case wanting became taking. I have never done this, he said. Neither have I. I might. My wolf is not gentle. I will try. But Kyle, yes. I am not fragile. I have a white wolf, and I survived 9 years of Ashenmoor, and I just faced down the woman who stole my entire childhood in front of 50 people. You are not going to break me. He looked at her. Then he laughed. A real laugh. A sound that started in his chest and moved through him like a seismic event, shaking loose something that had been locked tight for years. It was the 3rd time she had made him laugh, and it was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. 3, he said. 3 what? 3 laughs. You have now exceeded my war threshold by 200%. She grinned at him. It felt strange on her face, that much happiness. Like a muscle she had not used in so long it had atrophied. But it was coming back, like everything else. The ceremony was held that night in the Ironhold Great Hall. Not the formal affair that pack tradition dictated, with weeks of preparation and delegations from allied packs and ceremonial garments handed down through generations. Elara did not want any of that. She wanted the moon and Kale and the truth of what they were, and everything else was decoration. The pack gathered. Word had spread, because word always spreads, and wolves filed into the great hall with the quiet urgency of people who understood they were witnessing something that happened once in a generation. A white wolf claimed. A bond completed. History. Elara stood at the center of the hall in the grey sweater and borrowed boots. She had not changed. She had not dressed up. She was who? She was a woman who had spent the morning at a legal tribunal, and the afternoon discovering she was royalty, and the evening deciding that none of those things mattered as much as the man standing in front of her, with amber eyes, and a wolf that had chosen her before she even knew she had a wolf to choose back. Kyle stood opposite her. Black shirt, rolled sleeves, the scar, the hands, the eyes that had not left her face since they walked into the hall. Maeve officiated because someone had to, and she did it with characteristic bluntness. The bond is recognized. The wolves are in agreement. Alpha Kyle Voss of Ironhold, do you claim this woman as your mate, your Luna, your equal in all things? I do. Elara White Wolf, daughter of Lyanna, do you accept this claim? Do you stand with this male, this pack, this territory of your own will and without coercion? I do. Then mark each other and be done with it. My knees hurt. The laughter from the assembled pack was warm and real, and Elara felt it settle over her like another blanket. Kyle stepped forward. Close. So close. His hand cupped the side of her neck thumb, resting on her pulse point, and she felt his breath on her skin, warm and uneven for the first time since she had known him. This will hurt, he said softly. Briefly. I know. He kissed her first. Not the mark. A kiss. His mouth was warm and his lips were slightly chapped, and he kissed her the way he did everything else, with absolute focus, and no half measures. Her wolf surged and his wolf answered, and the bond between them tightened and sang. Then he turned his head and bit. where her neck met her shoulder. His teeth broke the skin in a clean, precise puncture that sent a wave of heat radiating through her body. It hurt. It hurt like fire, and then the fire became warmth, and the warmth became connection, and she felt him. Felt him the way she felt her own heartbeat, his emotions, his wolf, his absolute, terrifying, unwavering certainty that she was his and he was hers, and nothing in any world would change that. She marked him in return. She had to rise on her toes to reach his neck, and his hand steadied her at the waist, and when her teeth broke his skin, he made a sound that was not quite human, a low, rumbling growl that vibrated through her chest and into her bones. The pack erupted. Not cheers exactly. A sound that was deeper and older than cheers, a collective howl that started in the front rows and rolled backward through the hall like a wave, dozens of voices raised in the ancient recognition of a bond completed. The sound echoed off the stone walls and the timber beams and rose through the high windows into the night, where the moon hung full and white and close enough to touch. Elara pressed her forehead against Kyle's chest, his arms wrapped around her. His heartbeat was strong and steady under her ear, and she matched her breathing to it, and her wolf settled into a contentment so deep it felt like sinking into warm water. "How do you feel?" he murmured into her hair. She thought about it. She thought about the temple floor and the pink water and the cold pallet and the 9 years of silence. She thought about Marin's face in the clearing, the mask dropping the exhaustion underneath. She thought about her mother, Lyanna, the white wolf, who had been consumed by her own power. And she thought about the fact that she was standing in a great hall full of wolves who were howling for her, wearing a borrowed sweater and boots that did not fit with the most powerful alpha on the continent, holding her like she was made of something precious and fragile and strong all at once. "Warm," she said. He pulled her closer. 3 weeks later, Elara was in the compound garden, pruning the dormant rose bushes, when a courier arrived from Ashenmoor. Not a wolf. A human, a teenage boy on a bicycle, who looked terrified to be inside Ironhold's walls. He carried a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with kitchen string. Sarah intercepted him at the gate, but Elara waved her off and took the package herself. Inside was a wooden pendant on a leather cord. Simple. Hand-carved. A crescent moon with a small wolf howling at its center. No letter. No note. No explanation. Elara turned the pendant over in her fingers. The wood was old, worn smooth by years of handling. On the back, so small she almost missed it, 2 initials had been carved with a knife point. L.S. Lyanna. Silver pine. It was the pendant Elara had been told was her mother's, the one she had left behind in the temple. The one she had decided was not worth keeping, because she had no proof it was real. Someone had sent it to her. Someone in Ashenmoor who knew what it was and knew where to send it, and cared enough to wrap it carefully and pay a boy on a bicycle to ride 40 miles. She turned it over one more time. The wood was warm from her palm. The crescent moon caught the afternoon light. She put it on. The leather cord was rough against the mark on her neck, the one that was still pink and raised and tender, the one that pulsed gently in time with a heartbeat she could feel even now across the compound, 3 floors up, steady as a metronome. She went back to pruning the roses. The thorns pricked her fingers, and the dirt packed under her nails, and the mountain wind carried the first hint of distant spring, not here yet, but coming. She could smell it. She could smell everything now. The whole world was wider and louder and more detailed than it had been a month ago, and she was standing in the middle of it, with dirt on her hands, and a dead woman's pendant around her neck, and a living man's heartbeat in her chest, and the roses were going to be spectacular this year. She could tell. She had a wolf's nose for it.